The day my own son told me to get a job or prepare for a nursing home, something inside me finally broke. At 71 years old, after a lifetime of sacrifice, I stood there in his living room feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. That was the moment I realized I was no longer a father in his eyes. I was just a burden he wanted gone. My name is Elijah Brooks, and for months I had been living in my son Marcus' house, trying my best to stay invisible. I kept my footsteps quiet, used the same chipped mug every morning, and avoided sitting in the living room unless I was told it was okay. The small space they gave me was not really a bedroom. It was more like a storage area with a bed squeezed into it, surrounded by boxes that were not even mine. Every day felt like walking on thin ice, like one wrong move would remind them that I did not belong there. Marcus and his wife Rochelle spoke to me in short, cold sentences, always with a tone that made it clear I was costing them more than I was worth. They talked about money constantly, about bills, about groceries, about how my presence added pressure to their already tight finances. They told me my pension was not enough, that my $800 barely made a dent in their expenses. Rochelle would bring up numbers like $2,400 a month as if I was personally responsible for every cent. She even claimed my medication was costing them hundreds, something I later found out was not even true. But at the time, I believed it, and it made me feel guilty just for being alive. What hurt the most was not the money talk. It was the way they treated me like I had never done anything for them. I spent decades working long hours, taking extra shifts, doing whatever I could to make sure Marcus had a better life than I did. I paid for his schooling, covered his medical bills when he was a sick child, and even sold my car once to afford proper treatment when he had a severe illness. I still remember those nights sitting beside his hospital bed, praying he would make it through. I remember the fear, the exhaustion, and the determination to never let him feel alone. Back then, I would have given up everything for him without hesitation. I guess I already did. After my wife Diane passed away, things changed even more. The house we built together felt empty, and Marcus started visiting less often. Calls became shorter, visits became rare, and eventually, he suggested I move in with him so he could take care of me. At the time, it sounded like love. I thought maybe I would not have to feel so alone anymore. But living with them was not care, it was control. My pension went directly into their household, and I had no say in anything. Rochelle created rules about when I could use the kitchen, how long I could stay in the shower, even where I could sit. Sometimes, when guests came over, I was asked to stay in my room so I would not make things uncomfortable. Even my grandchildren started treating me differently. I could feel the distance growing, like they were being taught that I did not matter. There were days I would sit alone in that cramped room, staring at the walls, wondering how I became invisible in my own family. The only place I felt like myself again was the local library. It became my escape, a quiet space where no one judged me or made me feel like a burden. That is where I met Evelyn Carter, a woman around my age who carried the same kind of loneliness in her eyes that I felt in my chest. We started talking casually at first, sharing small conversations about books and life. Over time, those conversations became deeper. We talked about loss, about family, about the quiet pain of being forgotten by the people you once gave everything to. With her, I did not feel invisible. I felt seen. Evelyn understood me in a way no one else did. She had her own story of being pushed aside, of feeling like she no longer belonged anywhere. Somehow, through those shared experiences, we built something meaningful. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. One day, she looked at me and said something that changed everything. She told me I did not have to live like that anymore. She offered me a place in her home, not out of pity, but out of companionship. At first, I hesitated. Pride, fear, and uncertainty held me back. But deep down, I knew staying where I was would slowly destroy me. So I made a decision I never thought I would have to make. I packed my small suitcase and walked out of my son's house without asking for permission or approval. When I told Marcus I was leaving, he looked confused, almost shocked. It was as if he never believed I would actually stand up for myself. In the days that followed, they started calling me repeatedly, trying to understand why I left. But I already knew the truth. I had spent too long living without dignity, and I was not going back to that life. With Evelyn, everything felt different. There was no pressure, no control, no constant reminder that I was a burden. We shared meals, conversations, and laughter. I even started writing again, putting my life story into words, reclaiming a voice I thought I had lost. Later, I discovered something that hurt almost as much as everything before. The financial strain they kept blaming on me was exaggerated, even fabricated. They had used those numbers to guilt me, to control me, and to keep access to my savings. That realization confirmed what I already felt in my heart. Months later, Marcus reached out and apologized. He asked if he could visit, if we could try to rebuild something. I listened, and I accepted his apology, but I also made something clear. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean going back to what broke you. Now, I live a quiet life filled with respect, companionship, and peace. I learned that family is not just about blood, it is about how people treat you when you need them the most. And sometimes, the hardest decision you will ever make is the one that finally sets you free.